So today I played a game in West Valley Chess Club. My opponent was once again Leidner, who is 71 years old or so. This is the fifth time we played. In the past, he beat me twice, and one draw and one win. The latest game that we played actually ended up winning. So we both have 2 out of 2 and playing on board 1. So we're both in the first place. He has white. He's rated 2009 and I'm about 21, 27 at the moment. So he plays knight f3, and he normally plays d4, but he's trying to choose a move order to avoid Benoni, which is what I play a lot of times. So knight f3, knight f6, c4, e6. Now if he plays d4, then I'm gonna try to play Benoni again. I'll transpose to Benoni this way. But he plays knight c3, so here I have a choice to either stay in English opening by playing something like c5 or bishop b4, or I can play d5. He has a choice here between playing d4, which transposes to Queen's Gambit, or he can play g3 or b3 and transpose into righty opening. He plays d4, bishop e7, so we transpose into a Queen's Gambit decline, which normally starts with move d4, d5, c4, e6, etc. And he takes. So the most popular move here for black is to take with a pawn. However, I recently watched a lecture by Grandmaster Sam Shankland, and he was going over the line where black takes with a knight, and I decided to give this line a try. The idea here is black's gonna give up center, so white has this really strong pawn center, but he tries to undermine it immediately. So the game proceeds in the spirit of a Grunfeld defense. c5, bishop d3, knight c6, putting pressure on the center, castle. So here, of course, black cannot win the pawn due to bishop b5 check wins the queen. So instead of taking the pawn, I castled. So now I'm actually threatening to win the pawn because there's no discover check anymore on b5. So bishop e3, and here's the first time I really had to think in this game. The computer actually recommends playing cd, and after trading play b6 and develop bishop on b7. So this is kind of interesting position. White has a center, probably gonna try to push d5 at some point and create a passed pawn, and of course black has 2-on-1 on the queen side. So computer evaluates this position as equal, but there's a lot of play here. I prefer to develop my queen to c7, queen c2, and here this is why I played this move. I had this idea to play f5, which actually turns out to be not so good. The best, so the idea is simple. The idea is to undermine the center, to destroy white's center, and to equalize the game. Maybe push f4 at some point and try to organize something on the king side. But turns out white has a very strong response. Just take a pawn, take the pawn, and then the greedy computer just takes a pawn on c5, and on this he just does not give up that pawn back. So valuation by Houdini is plus 1.06 in white's favor. My opponent ends up playing d5, which is not the best. So this allows me to actually destroy his center. And now he has a choice to take a pawn on h7 with check, or he take on d5. He took on d5 in the game. If he takes on h7, then it's really messy. Black stacks an exchange, tries to organize some attack, very unclear position. And of course white doesn't have to give up an exchange. So, but roughly both moves, both taking the pawn on d5 and on h7, are about equivalent. He takes on d5, king h8 the only move, bishop e4. So it seems like black has to defend the pawn on h7, but I found this active move knight e5, which looks quite threatening. So now if white takes a pawn on h7, I was gonna play bishop d6, threatening mate on h2. g3 is forced, bishop h3, rook e1, and rook e8. And I thought that I have a lot of compensation for the pawn here, but of course computer very calmly says it's okay, white can just take a pawn and play this position. But personally I think it's really hard for a human to defend this. The light squares around white's king are very weak, and black has a very active play, a lot of compensation for the pawn. So I would be happy to play this just because I try to play aggressively and push for a win. So just a little bit about Mike's style. He tends to not to take any risks if he doesn't have to, because he's afraid to miscalculate the tactics, I'm guessing. So he just decided, okay, if I'm giving up this pawn, if I'm giving up this pawn, then I might have good reason to do it. So he just like trusts me that taking this pawn is bad, and just makes a solid move, rook a to e1. And here actually my position is fine, but it's hard to find a good move, and I think I have to play bishop f5. I would like to not bishop f5 leads to a lot of trades, and I would like to not trade pieces and keep everything on the board, but unfortunately if I play something like queen h5, it's going to be really hard for me to develop this bishop from c8 because the pawn on b7 is pinned. So bishop f5 is forced. Now he has to take, and I can take with the queen, or I can play the intermediate move bishop d6. I cannot play rook takes f5. This is disastrous and loses immediately to something like bishop c1, and next move white just gonna take on e7 and completely winning. So queen takes f5, queen takes f5, rook takes f5, and rook d1. And here I thought that I have a good chance to play this position for a win due to the weakness of pawns on a2 and c3. But unfortunately white has decent compensation for those weak pawns, and this compensation comes in the form of the open file, and white is going to try to invade on the d7 and put a lot of pressure on the 7th rank. So it's really, computer evaluates this as equal, I guess, because of that factor. So I'm trying to get to his weak pawns, so I'm playing b5, and my idea is to play c4 and kind of like fix this pawn on c3 and attack it later. But he finds a very good move c4 himself, so he temporarily sacrifices a pawn. I can take or I can play a6, but either way both moves about the same strength. So I like taking here because this kind of deflects his rook from d1 to c1, because he has to spend time winning my pawn back. I play rook b8. The idea is to play rook b2, g4, very active move. I guess he didn't want to end up playing rook takes c4, rook b2, and have me pressure his f2 pawn in some lines. So like something like this. And yes, like white wins a pawn, but black will have some compensation. White pieces are tied up around the f2 pawn. I'm not saying it's bad for white, but he just doesn't like playing like that. He doesn't like to have his pieces tied up, so he just pushes my rook away, forces me to go on d5. I could also go to f7, but d5 seems most natural. Rook takes c4. So here I undermined his g pawn, also making a fleet to my king to escape, to prevent any potential back rank problems. He plays h3, we trade here, play rook b2, rook a4, and here play rook b4. Now I calculated this line from far in advance, and I realized that at the end of this line I'm gonna have a passed pawn, and I was hoping there's gonna be enough for a win, but it turned out it wasn't. So after rook b4 he has to take on b4. If he does something like this, then he gets mated in 2 moves. So check here, 3 moves, rook h5 mate. Rook takes b4, pawn takes, he takes on a7, I play rook a5, double attack on the bishop and the pawn. Bishop d4, take on a2. So material is equal, very simplified position. My only chance to win is to promote the b pawn, which is 3 squares away from promoting, but unfortunately he can hold the position. Rook e1, bishop d6. I was hoping he would play something like this here, and then I have some kind of tricks, like after rook a6 I'm threatening rook h2 check. If he plays here, then maybe I can promote. But even that turns out, even that doesn't really work. We're still a draw everywhere, unfortunately. So check, king h7, rook d8, bishop e7, rook d7. So now I have to decide where to go. I can play bishop f8, I can play rook e2, or I can play rook d2. So I decided to go into the rook endgame. Now he's forced to take pretty much, otherwise I'm threatening to play bishop f6 and win the bishop. So this is a very simple rook endgame. He offered me a draw here, but I did not take it. I realized that I'm the only one playing for a win here. So he still has to be very careful and very precise to make a draw. But even though for a player of 2000 level, this shouldn't be a problem. So he protects a pawn. I got my rook on the second rank. He gets my rook. He gets his rook behind the passed pawn. Very important. It's very basic, but it's important to play this correctly. Rook b2, and then this is another good move. He cuts off my king from the 6th rank. Here I started pushing the pawn b3. So notice how he goes to g2. It's very important because like something like this, might lose to this idea. And if white takes on b2, rook h2 wins the rook. Otherwise black promotes. So king g2, very precise. b2, f5, king g8. Now he cuts me off again. King f8. And here g5, and I realized I have to be really careful and not to do anything stupid, because if I move my king too far, I'm actually might lose the game. So we just played this. So let me give you a simple line. So if king d7, king d7 is still okay. Rook b7 check, king c6 is still okay. Rook b8. So if I go king c5, I'll lose immediately to f6, and his pawn promotes, and there's nothing I can do. So unfortunately he has a perpetual check. If he wants to take a draw, he can't really win here, and I did not have a choice but to take a draw with perpetual check. So it was a hard-fought game, somewhat tricky. My opponent once again didn't really make any mistakes, and now I have 2.5 points out of 3. So hopefully next week I can win. Thank you.